CO, hello. My name's Cade Thomas, and we're here with Double Feature Movie Club. This is our 44th episode, which is spectacular, really. I'm shocked that we've done it this long. And this week we are talking we're calling it two movies about 1960s icons. We're talking about First Man, directed by Damien Chazelle from 2018, stars Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy. It's about the moon landing, the lunar landing that happened in 1969, and Ryan Gosling plays Neil Armstrong. And then the second film we are talking about is 2014's Love and Mercy. It's about Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. We'll talk more about it, but it has Paul Dano playing the 1960s version of him, and then John Cusack playing him from the 1980s. So exciting to have to talk about those two films, and I am joined this week with Diane returning and Ava as our guest. How are you both doing?
Good. Glad to see Diane is back, just under the wire. Oh, maybe she's back.
Can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Can you hear us, Diane?
Testing. She's typing. That probably means no.
No, it means no.
Sign language.
Means, I have no sound. Okay. Well, that's interesting, Diane. I'm gonna kick you out. You're gonna join again.
We'll have to vamp.
Got to vamp. Kick Diane out. Diane will be back. This is prolonging her return. I think this is what's great here is that we'll here we go.
The suspense.
Can you hear us? We're talking? No? Okay.
Boo.
Okay. We can hear you. I think. Uh-huh.
Is there a switch on your headphones?
Okay. Here we go.
Well, while we're getting Diane back, I know one of your favorite shows is ending.
Yes.
Or has ended. One of mine is. So I just have to promote The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I just thought the quality was just wonderful throughout, but the last season it wound up making this wonderful feminist statement, just beautiful. And there's lots of loving male characters in it, so it isn't about bashing men or men against women or anything like that. It was just really beautifully done. So I would highly recommend that to anybody.
When does that end?
It's the whole season is out. The whole 9 episodes. So they ended it too short, in my opinion. Season 5, they could have gone on and on. Especially they could have done the next generation too, because her kids played a big part. Kind of at least referenced, were a big part in the last season. So
can you hear us, Diane? Okay, good.
Yeah. This will give me a chance to create a new series in a couple of years, Ava.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, those two writers, we'll see. But just really the sets, the production values, the cast, just really superb. I think it's taking my top place now away from Grace and Frankie.
Well, they were saying
there was an
interview with the creator, and she was like saying, or whoever, I don't know, maybe the showrunner, I don't remember who it was exactly but they were saying that we're ending it because I guess Amazon has to pay for some orcs, is the way that was phrased in a
pay for some what?
Orcs pay for their Lord of the Rings movie or the shows that they're doing That's what the insinuation was, is that it was ended because for budgetary that they need to keep spending money
could
on
be.
this.
I'm sure it had a huge budget, and they had trouble with all that kind of stuff with Gilmore Girls. They like dropped out of the last season, at least the last season, because of just negotiations and being worked too hard, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll have to see what they come up with next. But just I just really thought it was an exceptional series.
Well, Diane, I am so glad that you're back here on the show. I'm sorry that it was plagued with technical difficulties right at the beginning of it. But
yeah, I see. I know. Yeah. I can tell you miss me.
I missed you. I missed having you on here. We had some great guests who come in and had to fill in last minute and everything. So, but we did miss having you here, and I would have loved to have forced you to watch Greasy Strangler.
Yeah. Boy, did I miss some great movies.
Yeah.
I've added them to my list to watch.
Yes. Well.
Someday.
Yes. And yes, I mean, we'll announce this up top in case people don't listen to the end of it, but this is our second to last episode of the season. We have one more episode next week, and that'll just be Diane and I, and then we'll also do our rankings, our best and worst of the season too. So technically 2 more episodes, but yeah. Season's wrapping up here. We'll be back later in the year, but that's just to announce that. Yeah.
I'm going to talk to Harrison about my worst ranking, since I trust Harrison's judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I've learned.
So that means you don't trust Cade's.
I'm the only one who's seen all the movies.
I'm extrapolating.
Well, if you listen to the podcast, you would know that the movie that I thought was the worst, Cade thought was in the top 5. Mm-hmm. So
I remember that. I do remember that.
We can definitely have a difference of opinion when it comes to movies, but that's why you guys listen and love us.
Yes, the good thing is last week I was on a lone island, I think, on Greasy Strangler, so that still happens. But it would have been great to hear your opinion with that. So we'll talk about, we'll rank we'll have our top 5 and our bottom 3, and we'll talk about that. That's one of my favorite episodes. Don't know when that will come out, since we record that and put it out later, but that is something to look forward to, because I really like that episode a lot.
It's always a lot of fun, because we don't talk about it ahead of time.
Yeah.
So we really go into that episode not having any idea what the other person's going to come up with. And so it always surprises me, not when we differ, but when we agree.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, how in the world did that happen? But we run into that sometimes.
Yes. And and it's interesting because, like, it's unclear when we're in the season, I think, of like when we say, oh, we really like this one, or we really don't like this one, or we wouldn't recommend, or whatever we say. It's only in comparison, I feel like, can you really tell, like, no, this one's the one that I really really do like, and I do think, so
people should add to their list.
Yes.
Yeah. And here's the ones don't.
Mm-hmm. Here's the
no
ones
matter
don't.
how free it is, even if you walk into someone else's house and they're watching it, and they invite you to take a seat, run.
Yeah. Just leave.
Do not pass go.
Tell them you forgot the dip. You gotta run home and get it.
Yeah.
Whatever
excuse gets you out of that house.
Right.
Yeah.
So this afternoon, I started watching Smart Lists on Max, or what used to be called HBO Max, and is now called Max. And it's a podcast that they did this live in Washington D.C. It's Jason Bateman.
I saw that advertised on there.
Will Arnett and Sean
Hayes.
They were hilarious, because it's like the behind the scenes. They get to fly on a private jet to to Washington, D.C. from L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hilarious. These guys are, for a while there, it was like, are they really making fun of each other or are they being serious? Jason Bateman can deliver the most scathing lines, with a straight face to the point where you think, yeah, he's not pulling their leg. He really, really means this, but no, and they, so they did a little tour. Oh, goodbye.
You're there.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm here. Anyway, so they did a little tour and of Washington D.C. and then they go on stage and have a guest that's a surprise, and I'm not going to tell you because it would kill the surprise. But I recommend it highly. I was thoroughly enjoying it, and I thought of you, Cade. I thought, we should do a behind the scenes kind of live show with cameras following us around and Katie's burp and
I do. I haven't ever checked out that that podcast, which is crazy because I do love all those people in it, and I mean, huge Arrested Development fan. So I've loved their talk show appearances where they kind of bother each other and everything. That I just haven't ever done that, but I saw that advertised on Max. And I was like, I need to watch. I need to watch that. So I'm glad you watched it and liked it.
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed it. It was. They're definitely good friends, and they definitely know how to talk to each other in a loving way.
So was that did that launch with Max, or was that already on like Discovery Plus and it got moved over to Max? Do you know?
Well, I think it launched with Max.
Okay.
It was one of the shows that they were really hyping. I don't remember it being on anything else, but then I'm not a big Discovery Channel watcher, so I mean the commercial is like, oh Lord help me. It has all those Discovery Channel kind of shows.
It's like, talk about, like, I think what people are having problems with that is that, like, these are two brands that are like diametrically opposed to each other, and they're shoving them together, and like, and it's like, that you're going to have problems there because it's brand confusion.
Yeah, when I think of HBO, I think of classic, well done dramas, that you could kind of count on. That were going to be a high quality, even movie going kind of experience with their movies, that kind of thing. But
even Warner Brothers in general, which is the parent company of HBO and all that, like it just has a more prestige, even though it has had some things that aren't great. But and it has a prestige quality to it. But Discovery. It's not that. It's throw everything at the wall, see what sticks.
Naked and afraid in the jungle. All that stuff. Yeah. So, this could not have been on Discovery because there are cuss words in it. Discovery didn't have that. So.
Well, Discovery Plus may have. I don't honestly know what they're streaming, what they even did over there. But you're right. It might be one of their launch ones.
Yeah. But it was really good, and I recommend it, especially for any podcaster.
Yes.
Because it was kind of funny. They were so used to sitting in their underwear, or with their shorts on and having these conversations during COVID. And then now they're on stage. And it's like, what the heck? How did this happen? So, and I love Jason Bateman. I just think he's, really, really a lot of fun. Yeah. And of course, he's a health nut. So he's like, I had kale. Now I've got to eat, 4 tablets of Gas X so that I don't fart on stage, Yeah. Oh, and my favorite was the sugar-free Red Bull that he had to have. So his body is a temple until he needs some Red Bull. But it's sugar-free, so it's chemical-laced. It can't get worse than sugar-free Red Bull. From a chemical perspective. So. But he had kale.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll get started here. We'll go ahead and jump in. So we're talking, like I said up top, to movies about 1960s icons. First was Neil Armstrong movie called First Man. And then later we'll talk about Love and Mercy about Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. But first, Diane will give the plot of First Man after this musical interlude.
is based on the only authorized biography of Neil Armstrong by James R. Henson. Directed by Damar Chazelle, which I never say that name right, and based on a screenplay by Josh Singer. It stars Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong, Claire Foy as his wife, Kyle Chandler from Friday Night's fame, and surprisingly, cameos with by Armstrong's two sons and his grandson. I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget this part. The movie opens with Armstrong flying an X-15 when it bounces off the atmosphere and he has to save the plane. Now, this is a true story. He did have this happen to him when he was flying this X-15. And for those of you who don't know your history, the X-15 is the one of the planes that they broke the sound barrier with. And they called it a space plane because they literally could get to the upper edge of the atmosphere. Anyway, the story starts there and it ends with the moon landing, which we all know a lot about that. And I think that the biggest takeaway from this movie is that the technology is a marvel in the movie. They were able to combine new and restored scenes with original, film from the moon landing, a lot of original sound from the NASA's, command center. And I think that the thing that really makes this movie work is that it moves between the technology of going from 1961 to 1968's moon landing and the steps that it took to get to that point. It combines that with the family drama of the Armstrong family and what they were going through at the same time. And I love that aspect of it, that it looked at it not only from what he accomplished in his life and what the team at NASA accomplished, it's also what his family went through and how they supported him and that aspect of it. So with that, Cade, let's talk about this movie. I loved it. Let me just get this out because, I love this guy. I'm like such a geek. I love the fact that this phone has more computer power than that freaking spaceship had. And yes, I believe it happened because I was laying on my stomach on the floor watching it on TV in 1968 when I was 13 years old. No, yeah, I was 13. Oh, yeah, you're not making any sound at all, Cade.
Sorry, there we go. Had myself on mute. What did you think about it, Ava? I'll go to you first.
Wow, I will try to keep my comments short because I know I can go on. I totally agree with Diane in terms of the content. I'm very protective of it for the reasons Diane just stated. It's still the most exciting thing in my lifetime. I mean, we haven't even been back to the moon, and they did it with almost no computing power. But so first of all, what I liked about it, I love the performances. I love how the accuracy of his missions, and it really showed how incredibly brave he was and how calm under extreme pressure. They really depicted that well. But as a biopic, I'm really hard on biopics because I prefer documentaries because they're usually more truthful. And I read about this. The book was very well researched, but that emotional string they pulled just wasn't accurate. In fact, there's the biographer asked him, "I'm going to spoil it. Can I do spoiler alert?"
I mean, I think you're okay. Go ahead. I
want to spoil it because I don't think it should have been in the movie. The bit about him, leaving something regarding his daughter on the moon. The biographer asked him and he stated no. And then the biographer let it be in the movie because he hoped it was true. which I can't. So it added such a sad note to something that was so exciting, and I thought irresponsible that they left out his pride and his excitement and what he had done, and the fact that he was so humble afterwards because he believed it was a huge achievement on 400,000 people's parts, all the scientists involved and etc. So as a movie, I liked it. I liked it, but as a biopic, I can't go there. I can't go there.
Yeah, because those were two glaring errors.
To say that again, Diane. Sorry.
Those were two glaring errors.
Yeah, they were deliberate. So I hate it when the filmmakers put their emotions. They pulled that string deliberately to make it more emotional because he was such an unemotional man. Or I shouldn't say unemotional. He didn't show his emotions. That was a huge part of his personality. Yeah, for a test pilot. He wasn't colorful. He wasn't charismatic. That was a big part of his legacy, was to disappear into the background and not make money off of the journey and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought I thought about it a lot. And just as a biopic, that's how it was marketed. If it wasn't marketed as a biopic, then I would have had a totally different review.
What did you think about the fact that his sons actually came out and said, the night before he was supposed to leave to go to the launch, that their mom made him go talk to those boys, and that the way that worked out was exactly like they remembered it?
Well, I read something a little different. Like, the scene was there. The mother did make him go, but I don't think there's evidence of the big fight that they showed. I don't know about that. It wasn't in the biography because I looked. But they did say, both those sons did say, yes, that scene was in there because of them, but it wasn't. They were never afraid for him.
Because of the way he talked to them. It's because of the way he had presented it. I think that says a lot about him. No, the scene made it seem like they were nervous and all this kind of stuff. And the handshake, they made a big deal about handshake. They came out later and said, we don't remember if he hugged us or if it was a handshake or whatever. So again, it was just kind of, I think, and what was so interesting is Neil Armstrong told the biographer to go talk to everybody for the biography. He did I think 50 hours of interviews, but it was mostly non-emotional stuff, so these parts that he did get were the sister said something like, oh, I hope he left something for the daughter, but she did. He said he didn't, so it's you can hope what you want to hope, but it landed. I could even buy it if it didn't land on such a heavy note. It just kind of, for me, cast a pall on his story and didn't tarnish his legacy, I don't think, but it didn't focus on the right things, I didn't think so. And a biopic to me should go, not just 9 years of the guy's life. The biographer wrote that too. The only thing they couldn't really do in the movie was show he had flown hundreds of missions and hundreds of different, or not hundreds of different kinds of aircraft, but many, many different kinds of aircraft. And that's what made him the pilot he was. They didn't touch on any of that either. You don't get into an X-15 unless you have proven yourself, right? So you can't have just flown a Cessna. You really have to work up to that, typically from the military, to do that. And you're right, they did leave that out. But I think we already saw that in The Right Stuff. Of what those guys had to do.
The Right Stuff, yes. And The Right Stuff was also based on a really well-researched book. But it was so highly entertaining, and so the spirit of it was so different. And that was going to be, Diane stole my ending. That was going to be
sorry. I just thought that they didn't have 3 hours, because they really were trying to do this to the moon landing, I thought.
Maybe they could have, It's a big story. Yeah.
I'm going to do my opinion. So here's my thought on this film. I
loved it.
You loved it. Ava didn't like it. Thought it was still a good movie. Okay. So I think I'm out on a limb here. I don't think a lot of people agree with me. I think it's a well liked movie and well thing. I found it to be, and this is someone who I love space stuff. I was president of my astronomy club in high school. I love space. I love I love mid-century. So all that stuff. I like a sort of stoic character that you get to peel back, and I love family dramas. Everything I should love about this movie. I found it to be horribly dull. One of the most boring watching paint dry experiences I've ever seen in my entire life. This is it was nails on a chalkboard of just boredom, and nothing was. It was style over substance, and yet there was nothing there. There was nothing there beyond he had a child die, and boy is that sad. And it's like, yeah, that is, and it's 2.5 hours of that. And I don't know. It's supposed to go a long ways with watching them click buttons, and I'm like, okay, I get that you clicked buttons and you looked out of a small window. Like there was that's it. That's what the movie was him going to meet other people and look out of a window and click buttons and close-ups. This movie's all like 90% just close-ups of this face that's totally unemotional, and I couldn't, and it was just one of the worst experiences I've seen in a film, and I don't understand it. I don't understand what people liked about it. I feel like an hour could have been cut out of this movie and nothing would have been lost, and I would have gotten it, and it would have been in and out a lot quicker.
Yeah. Well, and I think that makes total sense to me, Cade. Because, I mean, from your perspective, I can totally see that. I mean, I agree with you from the perspective that our perspectives could be diametrically different. Mm-hmm. The characters that were in that movie are people who are well known to me, right? All the incidents that occurred that led up to these moments are all well known to me. I thought it was incredible when they didn't show the Apollo blow up on, they always show it from Cape Canaveral perspective when you're across the lake from there to show it blow up. Instead, they just showed the door buckling.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my, that was such a huge dramatic moment. And then I thought, well, if you knew nothing about the history of this, what happened here, you wouldn't realize what really just happened.
And to me, that was the most interesting part of the movie. And like, it was finally felt kinetic and finally had something to do in the fact that he's over there in Washington talking to these people, and they're like, hey, you got to get out of there. And then like that, and that somehow these three people had to get out of the equation. I didn't really know the story there. I'm like, these people are obviously the people who would man it. And so I found that to be incredibly interesting and well done and everything. That is an hour and 20 minutes into this movie.
And it's not entirely accurate either. I have a relative who's at NASA.
Make a good movie is where I'm like, and
I worked with a guy whose uncle was part of the newsroom at Dallas Morning News whenever JFK was shot, and none of that's true. Just so you guys know. I did work with a guy whose uncle, or maybe it was his cousin's uncle, not sure, but somebody he knew said it was really like this instead of this. So, but anyway, so I think from a historical perspective, I could see where, Ava and I might have enjoyed some aspects of the history of it. And in my case, I loved all the, because that was huge to us. Having two older brothers, oh my gosh, it was like the space race and all that stuff was a big deal. And we got to watch all the launches. I actually went to Florida and saw the last launch of the space shuttle. That was pretty cool. From there, they have a park there where you can watch from that park, and it was pretty cool. Anyway, so yes, I did love this movie. I loved how they had all the guys in there, and it wasn't the right stuff kind of movie, I guess, because they didn't turn them into rock stars, but they were just regular people.
Yeah. Well, and that's my problem with it. It was supposed to be about him, and he is so reclusive. So I wanted something I didn't want fake emotion or, made up emotion or and the historical stuff I knew. So I certainly liked it more than Cade, but it wasn't a biopic, and I wanted a biopic.
I think there's a way. I mean, he is a fascinating person. I mean, yeah, what you know about him is, or at least what I know about him is, yeah, he famously, turned away from fame and turned away from that. Buzz Aldrin went and did the circuits and the
I know. I think people would prefer he had been more like Buzz Aldrin, but I kind of like that he wasn't. That he was kind of an engineer. He didn't have to go try to find Noah's Ark and be on Dancing with the Stars.
He was the astronaut's astronaut. My second cousin who worked at NASA, he knew all the astronauts. He was there during all that time. He hated Buzz Aldrin, just FYI. And he had a lot of personal interaction with him. But Neil Armstrong was the astronaut's astronaut, and where a lot of them could have technically done what he did, the astronauts themselves say there's not many of them that could have done what he did afterwards and handled the fame of it like he did.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a couple of things that did kind of throw me out of the movie. One is, at the time, these they were developing these rockets and all that stuff. The recreation, I guess, it's like they went and used the capsules that are in the museum because they're all old and rusted. It was like, guys, this would be new. It wouldn't be old and rusted. The rivets, and it's incredibly detailed. Don't get me wrong. I think I love that kind of detail because I'm a detailed person for that kind of stuff. But Lord, help me. Couldn't you have painted it? I mean, come on. It wouldn't look 50 years old then when they actually did this. So that threw me out. The other thing that kind of threw me out, since Hidden Figures, we now know that women did work at NASA. That women were involved in
but they were
creation and the launch. There were female engineers, there were mathematicians, there were all these people, and not in a single scene is there a woman. Not a single one. So I was pretty disappointed in that because we kind of had been reverted back to the old days, of how NASA's presented. Look back to the right stuff, that kind of thing, where the women are, they're left in the kitchen. Anyway, so that kind of disappointed me too, because I think you should show the reality of it instead of the, this made up version of what the world looked like in other people's eyes. And who knows, maybe the director and the screenwriter, maybe they really think that the 60s women didn't work. Maybe they really think that. I don't know. My mom worked.
Well, there wasn't much dialogue in the movie.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I whenever people would show clips of this things for award shows and all that, it would always be, rockets launching, and then like Claire Foy where she screams at Carl Chandler about, oh, you're just boys with your models and stuff. Yeah. Which
Boston Wood.
Yeah.
And out of Boston Wood. I mean, she really nailed it because they really were.
Yes. Well, they were
just lucky that some of that shit happened.
Well, and that's like 20 seconds of the film, which like, okay, build that out into an actual scene where she gets to do some more than that. But like, then when do they keep using that in trailers and everything? Because it's about it's a great line and she delivers it perfectly. And it's just like, give her more than that, or write a scene around that or whatever. I don't know. But that's just me.
Well, they had to take it. They had to do something to create a movie to make sure that we all remember that women really weren't there. It was just the boys. Just the boys. So those were the two things that really took me out of the movie. Every time they would show, the switches, like you said, okay, it was like, guys, there wouldn't be rust on these switches. Yeah. They just made these panels, and more than likely it was a woman who wired it. But I guess we can't see that part, can we?
Yeah, and I agree that the thing that took me out probably the most was the bracelet thing. At the end, I'm like, that seems.
Well, I knew it didn't happen. Yeah, so it didn't bother me.
I mean, like,
you know what's so funny is I was going through all this stuff here for my event this last week, trying to figure out what do I need to pull and not pull. And you know, my mother has those bracelets from all of our. Do you still have
The
your
baby
bracelets? Yeah, I don't even think they do those anymore like that.
If they did them, no, my mother wouldn't have.
She wouldn't have kept it. My mom did. So then I was like, well, you know, okay. But yeah, my mom did.
That's sweet.
And I have a new great nephew who was born on Thursday evening, and he didn't have a bracelet on. So I don't think they do those kind of bracelets anymore. But that was big back in the 50s and 60s.
I made a joke about out loud whenever he took the bracelet and put it in the drawer. I said, "Oh, what's he gonna do? Drop that on the moon?" And thinking that there was no way that they were going to do that, and they go ahead and they do that cheap thing there, and I'm like, that's really where I was like, okay.
And somewhere in there, what was it? How do you say that guy's name?
Damien Chazelle.
Damien and the screenwriter thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I think of like a visual perspective. I don't know. I'm trying to. I think that it was a fundamental misunderstanding of how far you need, or like how you needed to write that character. Like that was to me of like, yeah, he's very stoic, he's very reserved, and so they got that part right. But like how to then make an arc with a character like that, it just needs to be incredibly subtle. It doesn't need to have some sort of visual representation, but that's what Damien Chazelle likes doing, these sort of visual representations of big of character changes. And I'm like, I don't know if you can do that with a character like that. And so I don't know.
And you know what took me out of it was the tear. I'm like, can you cry inside those helmets? I don't think that's a good idea. It's going to be trapped in there.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, I ultimately.
We're worried about the snot.
I didn't really have a lot of notes about it. I mean, I thought it was interesting. It was shot on film. I hopefully you guys noticed that this time. It was 16 millimeter film.
I did. I did.
So you would even more notice it then. The idea was that they were trying to make it like it was like a documentary from the 60s. So they shot it on 16 millimeter film, which is really cool. That's neat that they did that.
So what did you? One of the sequences I loved is when they did the doc with the Gina, and they really were ragging on him for not using the Gina to anchor it and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was wrong at that point. So
yes.
I love the fact that he saved it. He saves an aircraft, and they are like ready to fire him on it. Let's see. And
the famous when he ejects from the model lunar module. I mean, that is absolutely true. Where they calculated less than a second. If he hadn't ejected, he would have been dead. Yeah. He just gets out, and I think they exaggerated that because the original recounting of that was he just went to work, like no big deal, like he wasn't burned on his face, and coming in and having a tussle with somebody. It wasn't a biopic.
Yeah, he probably came in and said, "Here's what you need to do differently. This is what's wrong with it." Because he was the engineer first. The scene where they switched off her radio, which led to the scene of her coming up there and chewing him out, that's his sons are in that scene. His two sons are in that scene.
In the scene at NASA, or
yes, the guys who switched off the radio. Yeah.
Oh, the guys switched off. Okay.
Yeah. That was his two sons. And then his grandson was the one that was playing the guitar. And that was something I didn't know, but they really did have a lot of those guys who work in that command center would, bring up musical instruments. Because they sat around bored most of the time,
Yeah.
So, they did do that. And let's see, what was it? Yeah, I already talked about Hidden Figures. Bunch of boys making models out of balsam wood. I do love that. That was a good line.
Her accent, she slipped in and out at various points.
Yeah, she did.
And she was trying to do this.
This time.
Yeah.
I always have a hard time with her because I see her first as Queen Elizabeth and then as the girl with the dragon tattoo. I just can't help it. It just switches in and out.
Yeah.
In 1968, children weren't allowed in the house. Just so you know, Kay, why there were never any children in the house. We weren't allowed in the house back in the 60s.
Okay.
You had to stay outside all the time. You didn't have a choice. Let's see.
Okay.
I thought Corey did a great job as Buzz Aldrin.
Was Buzz Aldrin bald at that point?
Balding, yeah. I think he's always been balding. I thought he had hair plugs after a while.
Real close crew cut.
Yeah, that's what I
he
thought
was
too.
Blonde, so he looked bald. It was very light hair and
maybe they didn't want to put Corey Stoll in a
wig
or something.
They have before and lots of other stuff. So
yeah. I don't know. That was another weird. That was like, and he did a good job. Yeah, I mean, I liked seeing people pop up of like, oh, okay, they're in the. I had no idea who all was in this. So when like Kyle Chandler walks in, it was like, oh, that was about as big energy that this movie had coming in. Is there's a character actor that I I like coming into the movie, every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all the notes that I had from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it. Yeah.
I did put on here. It was really slow. They could have cut out, a lot of it. To me, I would have rather just had a fully technical movie about how they did all this stuff, because I could care less about the family drama, because he isn't an exciting person in any way, shape, or form. If you really wanted to do a movie about an exciting astronaut, do Gus.
Yeah. Or Pecan Rat, or
somebody interesting.
Lots of them,
yeah.
Or kind of be around like like they try to at the very end before the moon, before all that they try to show like the media frenzy around it, but it's very small, and it's like, well, do that partially, do kind of like the frenzy around it and the people that are behind the scenes of this and how that like kind of impacts them, and they're like just normal people. Like there's a way to sort of do that really interestingly too.
I agree.
Yeah, if it was a true biopic, that would have been that was a huge part of it, was the how he handled the aftermath of it. And I would have liked to seen the before. I knew some of it, what his life was like before, but if this is a biopic, then do his biography. Don't
I think they realized he was too boring.
Don't try to do the depressing version of The Right Stuff. That's what it was, on just him. Like that scene you're talking about, Diane, at the beginning. Oh, it's almost the exact same scene from The Right Stuff, where he was trying to break the sound barrier, got out of the atmosphere, and then he ejected though. And it was like almost the same. It was almost like the same scene, but it was exciting. It was, it was a more uplifting version of it. Yeah. And it was real too. It happened in real life.
I did find it interesting. So the way that they shot it is the way that they tell the story is kind of different than a lot of, obviously intentional. I think the idea is that they're trying to make it seem very claustrophobic, that you're in this tiny little thing and you're in this small area. And so you only see things through these little ports, and you're kind of stuff in there. And I think that's the intention, but it doesn't seem very cinematic to be, to kind of only to lock your camera inside of this little tin box. And you only see sort of what they would see, and that was one of those things that is like, it didn't ever really capture what would be the excitement, because you're just inside that small thing, which I do think is intentional. So it's hard for me to get too angry about it, but that was something of like, it was hard. It was different than what we had, you would typically see in films like this. They would show you exteriors or wide shots, and when they do cut to it, it's not majestical in any way, and it's very sort of clinical the way that everything looks. So it's.
And actually, Cade, reading about the accuracy of it, I always like to do that. That was the one other thing that they dinged it on, was he was so high that the clouds, when they showed the clouds in that opening scene, he's above the atmosphere, would never have been that close. Right. He was way above. So that wasn't even as majestic as it could have been. It could have been, like way up there.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the fact that they did interdisperse some of the real footage from the landing and some of the real what the guys really said. I mean, they used the actual recordings, and then they had the guy who did those who was the original speaker on those. They had to come back and do some more for him, which I thought was pretty cool.
Hmm.
I think they tried to be accurate in the at least the technology side of it, that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay, so I have one more question for Cade, and then we can move on if you want.
Okay.
Do you now believe the moon landing happened? This is so funny. When I first met,
don't tell me you're a non-believer, Cade. Don't. I will just drop right out.
Well, I think it's fun to believe. I think conspiracy theories, used to be really fun, and they used to have like a wholesomeness to them. I mean, I guess Buzz Aldrin didn't think that moon landing hoax was a funny conspiracy.
No, he didn't.
But I certainly thought it was a funny conspiracy. But so I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there on the moon, so.
Kate, I have to tell you a quick story since Diane brought that up. My second cousin named his vacation house Tranquility Base, and he was destroyed that his grandchildren didn't know what that was. And like I said, he worked at NASA from before. He worked on missiles before the space program, and he worked all the way up through the shuttle. And he's just crushed. He's still alive, and he's crushed that people don't believe it.
They don't believe it.
That's his life work. That's his life's work, and it's not fun when you look at it from that perspective. And I'm sure Buzz feels the same way, and so do the five. At that time, NASA was about 500 people. Yeah, and it took tremendous courage to be those astronauts. Just huge.
Absolutely.
So.
No, I understand.
Believe it.
No, yes,
I'll never forget laying on the floor because we had enough children and parents that there weren't enough seating for everybody in my family. So the two youngest, me and my little brother, laid on the floor on our stomachs like this and watched it. Yeah. Incredible. And we got to stay up.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. It really was.
Yeah, I'm a story person, and to me, what's a better story? This about like humans triumphing and doing something great and accomplishing something at the last possible second, or Stanley Kubrick working with Richard Nixon on a soundstage to create a fake lunar landing.
If you had lived it, you wouldn't have feel that way.
Which one's a better story? I don't know. You tell me. Anyway, I guess we'll jump into recommendations. And ratings. Diane, we'll start with Diane this time since Diane's back. Would you recommend this movie, and what would you rate it?
I would recommend this movie to anyone who is a history buff, especially space exploration history buff kind of person. This kind of takes you there. You get that what was not in the right stuff you get in this movie, which I would recommend that for that highly. And I want to give it a rocket. Can I?
Sure.
We don't have any Tang, so I was thinking about that too when I was watching this movie. It was first off, I think it's too long, but anyway, we had two movies that were way too long this weekend. But I was thinking about all the things that we have now, thanks to that the 60s and what they did in space exploration.
Yeah.
Tang, GPS, so on and so forth. Anyway, this guy.
Yes.
Okay. Look, it's a great rocket. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
No problem. Ava, would you recommend this, and what would you rate it?
I cannot recommend it as a biopic. I think if it was a fictional movie, I would rate it differently. I would recommend it, but it was marketed as a biopic, and I can't recommend it as a biopic. I would give it 2 out of 5 Eagles for trying.
That's good. Yes. Well, so 2.
I mean, can I give it 2 Eagles and still not recommend it? Or do I have to give give it -2 eagles or something.
No, that's good. There's no system here.
They tried. They tried to do it, and I just think they didn't do it.
Yeah.
They had good intentions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've said before here so my opinion of the matter is this was incredibly boring. It was I wish I went in thinking I would like it. You know, I mean, I like Damien Chazelle's style typically, but you put it in a real live setting and you make it you know, and it's about something that is exciting and everything, and Ryan Gosling typically can do that sort of stoic thing really good. You know, look at like Blade Runner 2049 where he doesn't hardly emote at all, and yet you understand.
I never saw
character.
that movie.
Okay, well, he you know, Ryan Gosling has a separate, like, he does the sort of charming side, but then he also has this other type of character like Kay from 2049 where he does this very stoic, emotionless sort of thing, and that was a much better sort of performance, and because it was better written. It was like that. That's really where it came from, and this one, I feel like you could have told that story a lot more interestingly, and you could have trimmed out a lot. To me, I think the technical achievement is what should be applauded. I mean, the sound and the way that it was shot on film, and it was interesting. There's parts of it that they do this handheld shots of like when they're in like the control room in different parts, and they do this snap zoom, and I'm like, and that happens like not enough in the movie. I love a good snap zoom, and I think that more movies should have that. Succession does that a lot. I love handheld zooms. I think those are so cool, and I love that. And so this movie had a few of those, and I'm like, more, please, more. But no, it was very sparing and made no sense when I did it. Anyways, I don't know. I didn't care for the movie. I would not recommend it. It's way too long, but I'm glad I saw it. There's a positive. I'm glad I saw it. I gave it a moon. Happy moon
I
guy.
saved the moon for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did too.
Thank you.
Of course, Eagle's good, you know, Eagle has landed.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was an astronaut emoji. I had a few in the back pocket. I had rocket I did not have Eagle ready, so that was the one. So
yeah.
Didn't think about that. There's a cool video. This has nothing to do with it, but I saw online of this. I guess I think it was in Minnesota. Somewhere there was an eagle that landed out in the middle of like this suburban neighborhood, and they had someone was videoing it, and he just like landed out in front of someone's yard, and it was a beautiful. He was just like sitting around looking. They're beautiful creatures.
You know, when I went to Alaska,
huge.
I think the thing that was most shocking to me was seeing eagles sitting on lampposts, like you would see hawks out here where I live. Yeah, you see eagles, bald eagles on lampposts.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest shock to me when I first, because it's the first tour I went on, the first bus I got on, and went, oh my God, look at all these eagles. And the tour bus, the tour guide person was like, yeah, it's almost lunchtime. The tide's going out. It's almost lunchtime. They're just waiting. It's like, that makes sense.
They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. And I'm a bird person. I love birds. So, and they're some of the most beautiful creatures, I think, in existence.
Have you seen the video where the eagle, this guy captures an eagle swimming? He's in a lake, and this eagle is literally swimming to the shore. And he gets to the shore and hops up out of the water, and he has got this huge fish. The fish was so heavy, he could not lift it out of the water. So he just swam to shore with it. I'm like, yeah,
it wasn't giving up.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I would address. Sorry for our eagle diversion there.
Yes, couldn't help ourselves.
Couldn't help ourselves. We get a comment from They Said We Said. Who do we have to threaten to get on this show, or for Cade to guest on Cold Films? Love to be on your show. We're about to head into our summer hiatus, so be a perfect time to. If you have Diane and I both, we'd love to. Bring
you don't
our
really
show
have
on the
to
road.
threaten anyone. You just have to send me a lot of money.
You just have to bribe.
Just a little bribe. I'm saving up for my European tour, so
Yes.
No schmoozing, just a bribe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
would like to take a private jet. So
Yes. So yeah, we'd love. Love to do that. And we'll start. I mean, we're like I said, we're gonna be on a break, so we'll start booking our next season. Anyone who's interested, reach out to us at the at the end or second half of this year. So we'll have to that's always exciting to plan those when we'll going to start looking into. We don't even know what we're doing next season just yet. But
we really don't have a clue.
So we'll see. We don't know.
I'm gonna try to get some more rom-coms on there though.
Yes, I agree.
Less horror movies. I would settle for less horror movies.
Did you see Crazy Rich Asians? Okay.
Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay.
It's good.
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to try to get it on a list.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We'll have to go through and figure that out. We still have some that are from our original list, and we'll have to see. Next week we're doing one that Diane's already seen and has pressured me to do. So
you made me watch. Yeah, The Man Who Killed Bigfoot and JFK.
Hitler.
You made me watch that movie. Or Hitler, sorry. You made me watch that movie, so I'm making you watch,
this other thing.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer.
Oh, you're announcing it before we're even there.
I know. Well, hey, little tease.
What's going to be the other pairing with that?
I have no clue. But I'm going to look during the break.
Yes. So now we're going to head into intermission. We'll be. I'll be sure to grab something from this concession stand. We'll be back shortly, and then I will give the plot of Love and Mercy, the Brian Wilson of Beach Boys fame biopic. Biopic, according to Amy. Biopic. I'm gonna do that just to bother Ava.
Biopic sounds like biopic.
At this point, I just do that to bother Ava.
It sounds like a joint surgery of some sort.
Did you tell on me, Diane? I don't remember ever telling Cade that I didn't think that.
I don't remember telling on you, but I might have. I don't think I did, but I don't know.
Like biography, biopic.
Okay. Anyways, here's our intermission. We'll be right back very shortly.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time. All these delicious treats are waiting for you at the refreshment stand. Delicious fresh popcorn, ice-cold cola, and candy you know and love. They're all ready for you now, so you won't have to miss any of the feature. Come and get them.
And now, on with the show.
Okay, I'm going to give the plot of 2014's Love and Mercy. I'll be pretty brief with this. It's essentially this movie's told in two parts, and it switches back and forth at various points between the two. So you have one in the 1960s. Paul Dano plays a younger Brian Wilson. It's after their initial fame of the Beach Boys, and he's wanting to become more experimental with the sound and push forward the music and everything, and he starts working on the album Pet Sounds, and it goes through the sort of technical side of that, of what all went into the production of that famous album, and his process, and it deals with his relationship with his brothers and with his father, and all taking place in the 60s and sort of that era of his musical journey. And then it switches between that and in the 80s, John Cusack's playing an older Brian Wilson, and it's when he's under this legal guardian played by Paul Giamatti. He's somewhat of a recluse, but he's been given this guardian to sort of I guess it's sort of similar to that conservatorship that a lot of these handlers that celebrities have, and he's being put through. He's given drugs and he's given things to sort of keep him at bay and everything. And it's a sad story. And it's also a love story between him and Elizabeth Banks's character. I forget what her name, Melinda Ledbetter. They meet at a Cadillac dealership, and she's a salesperson, and they fall in love, and she tries to get him out of that situation. So those are the 2 points that they keep switching back and forth between, and it's a interesting way to tell a biopic. Anyways, we're going to talk about this with here we go. So I guess we'll start with Diane here, since we started, I think, Ava last time. What did you think about this film?
Oh, my Lord. I thought it'd never be over. I loved Paul Dano in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they should have eliminated everybody else from the movie and just let Paul Dano play Brian Wilson in that time frame. Because he was in there 100%, right? I mean, you truly believe him as Brian Wilson at that time. Now, my historical heart is not as into this movie as it was the last one, because I was never a Beach Boys fan, really. I had one of my brothers had a couple of their albums, I think, but yeah, I can honestly say I never saw them in concert, which is pretty amazing considering how many concerts I've been to. I don't know about you, Ava, but I've never been to see him in concert. I had always heard that Mike Love was a real asshole. I did hear that. And I think, he's portrayed that way. But, but talk about a long movie. Man, that was a long movie.
It's shorter.
It went on and on and on and on. Yeah. Where the first movie, First Man, I thought was a long movie. Uh-huh. This one seemed twice as long as that one to me.
Okay, I'll jump in before you, Amy, then. I love this movie. I thought this movie was a breeze to watch, I thought, in comparison. I watched it before First Man. And I was like, the entire time I'm watching...
This is where you died out, right? You cannot do 6 hours worth of movie, in one weekend. I mean, it's just like your brain's like done. And I think because I watched First Man first, and then this one... once you hit that 6th hour, it's like, I'm done. Please release me.
It's possible. It's possible that it has to do with the order in which that is. But I thought this movie changed it up, and at least each scene, you had 2 mindsets. You got to switch between each one. And
I thought you did get to go from 60s decor to 90s decor back and forth.
Yeah.
I love the fact that she had on that white blouse and it had the padded shoulders. I thought, oh yeah, I had that blouse. I did love that part.
But no, I found it to be highly entertaining, and I found both halves to be interesting. I think that the John Cusack part was much more conventional of a story. It had here's a love story and whatever. But telling a thing of that about the music industry that we're just now starting to finally sort of talk about openly. It's this sort of guardians and conservatorship and the handlers that are around these people and the money that's being made around them and how that and I think that's such an interesting topic, and it's such a sad situation. But yeah, Paul Dano in this and that sort of thing was so interesting to me, of how in love with music he was and how precise he was, this perfectionist. And I found that to be all very interesting. I know a lot of the Beach Boys songs, I know them. I had no idea, for me, I collect vinyl and everything, and I, hear music people and worked at the radio station. I never knew that Pet Sounds was a flop. I've only knew it as one of the greatest albums of all time. That's
it was
interesting.
A flop at the time.
Yeah. And so that was a shock to me. Is I didn't know that side. Because I've always just heard, Pet Sounds was, this is considered one of the greatest. And I've heard it. It is great. It's a great album. But I did not know it was a flop.
A lot of critical acclaim, but at the time it was a huge flop. And Mike Love, I remember this from at the time, he refused to do any of the songs from that album. live in their show,
Mm-hmm.
because Brian didn't play with him that much, so Mike
Yes.
Love had a very strong personality. So,
Yeah.
Ava, were you a huge Beach Boys fan?
I was not, but I loved the movie. I
It's a
thought
little
it
bit
was
before our time. Yeah.
a little bit before my. I loved this movie though. I honestly I didn't find either of these movies long, so I can't relate to that. But I thought this one really was an interest. First of all, it was a true biopic, right? It showed a good span of his lifetime. At the end, it gave a great epilogue. I loved it because I thought it was a really good depiction of mental health challenges. It looked to me like the father was never diagnosed, causing the abuse that happened to his kids, particularly Brian. And I also loved it because it's a positive story. I didn't find it sad at all. He triumphed in the end. It's a wonderfully uplifting story in that regard. Of course, it was very sad he suffered for so long, but here's this genius, right, that really ahead of his time musically, and has some type of mental illness challenges, and so I found it fascinating. He's been very open about it. I had seen a documentary a number of years ago, so I think it's probably pretty accurate. I mean, it followed the documentary pretty well. I love both performances. Paul Dano's particularly, I thought it was very interesting using two different actors, but that made sense because they were kind of two different people. Mm-hmm. They were in one state as a younger man in that situation than an older man in a totally different situation. And I thought Paul Giamatti was just perfect as the villain. I just wanted to kill him, which is what you want to do, and his body language and I've been in that situation where, do you remember the scene where he's talking to her, Elizabeth Banks, at the car and, telling her, trying to exert this control over her.
He's like standing in front of the door. Yeah, holding the door.
And like the physical. And I've had that happen to me so many times, and it's so annoying. Mm-hmm. And it's so just presumptuous and just offensive and et cetera.
And she's not giving him anything. Like she's just like
that I loved, and just her character in real life, of course. And I think Elizabeth Banks had to have been pretty accurate because, in her responses, like for the story to have wound up the way it did in real life, she would have had to be the person that Elizabeth Banks played. I think. Yes. She had to stand up to him, but not fight with him, right? She never confronted him. She never, physically or emotionally confronted him. She just kept her cool. She did what she had to do behind the scenes, and then she had enough love for him and herself to remove herself from the situation, right? Like she wasn't after his money or his fame or anything like that. She, saved him and then moved away from the situation. It was he that then came back to her, and then they wound up, I don't know if it's a spoiler alert or not, a tremendous love story. So, it couldn't have really ended any better.
That was the only complaints that I read about the movie, was the fact that, Melinda Ledbetter was her name, right? Mm-hmm. She pretty much runs the story because she's heavily involved in it, because she's his manager. His wife is. Mm-hmm. So, when they made this movie, that's why it's really centered around, from her perspective, their relationship.
She was a consultant.
Really
she was.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit more than a consultant here. But anyway, she never almost ran over him. That was, that wasn't real.
I don't even remember that part, but
when he came back in her life and begged her to, he ran away.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. And I had, personal experience watching someone have a mental breakdown, my own father, and very close like that. And it's very difficult, of course, watching that. And I just thought the movie depicted it so well from his, I watched The Doors. I don't know if you saw the movie The Doors, but after I was done, it's like, I've never taken drugs, but I know what it feels like now. drugs, I think, from that movie. And I felt the same way with this movie. It's like, I think I can understand at least a bit about what it's like to go through something like that. Personally, I thought the scene with the silverware was just amazing. Just the
noise.
that dinner scene where the noise got louder and louder, and it was.
It really made you understand sort of his, like, the fact that he
what's going on in his head.
What's going on in his head. Someone who is so in tune with music, and that your job is to hear sounds and to see and to like hear the different frequencies of things, and be like, and how that would be overwhelming at times, and how like if constantly in your head you're hearing different beats and different things like that, and I thought that they did that incredibly well.
Especially if you don't feel, that's what mental illness part of it is, right? You don't have control of your attention. You don't have control of your thoughts, or you think you don't. And that's gave you that feeling like, couldn't shut that noise out type thing. So,
and the sound design
to him for,
in general, I was going to say the sound design in general is like that part, but then also he's just sitting there like in his own thoughts, and you're hearing like all of the different sounds of Beach Boys songs, and like him pulling out things and hearing like that was incredible.
Sorting that out.
Yeah.
Directing the symphony, and then
all that I thought was very incredible. One of the with the John Cusack part, I did really like. I think one of the standout scenes is that dinner scene where they're with him and Elizabeth Banks, and it's with that mirror and the way that that's all shot, where like he's like talking about his father and how he was abusive and all of that, and then he's like there with like another one of his handlers and their girlfriend, and like they're all just using his money for his sake, they're told, and then they leave because of this awkward conversation. And
he actually says it's their favorite.
Yes, it's that's the whole reason that they're there, is because it's their favorite place to eat. Yeah. And they're using his money.
Like he doesn't get a choice on anything anymore.
Mm-hmm. But the way that that's shot with those mirrors at that in the booth there, and the way that like it like focuses on Elizabeth Banks's reaction, but then you still see him in the mirror, like that was such a really just solid performance from both of them, and that is part of the ones that's really sad, and really like you sort of understand, and it colors then the flashbacks that you have with Paul Dano. Like and the father figure in general was very fascinating. Was a very sad and fascinating storyline that's what a lot of these musical fathers are like. You can but that it was all those scenes with the father were standout things too.
Yeah. And they were short. I feel like they were very effective, that there wasn't many of them, but the ones that were very effective. Go ahead, Diane.
And you're right, they were short scenes, because I think the director didn't want you to ever feel any empathy for the dad. Mm-hmm. There was nothing about him that you wanted to feel empathy for him. His presence in that movie were almost like machine gun fire. It was like really short and really abrupt and really focused around the effect it had on Brian, instead of the effect of his dad.
Well, and he came around at interesting points. Yeah. Like he came around like during high points to bring him down. He came around during low points to bring him down further. Like that the idea that this person would come in at whenever you just don't need him, and he'll come in and sink everything.
I think that
and he lost 90% of hearing in one of his ears.
Yeah.
I
think that Pet Sounds, that was a perfect point to bring in the dad with the new band his dad's got, who sounds just like the Beach Boys used to sound right there at Pet Sounds. Mm-hmm. What they didn't show, and I would love to have known, Brian still got that album made, even though Mike Love hated it, everybody around him were all talking about how they hated it. He still got it made. So there was some fight in him I don't think we see depicted. We see the artistic genius he was, but he had to do some negotiating to make that kind of stuff happen too,
and to make it a Beach Boys album and not a Brian Wilson album. Yeah,
right, exactly. And I think they didn't show how he continued to make music through the 80s. And I mean, they did show this Fingali, like, he's making me do this recording and stuff. But before that, he still made music as Brian Wilson. So they didn't show that part of it either. I wanted a little bit more Beach Boy music, maybe, like a couple of songs from Pet Sounds would have been great instead of just seeing him make it, to see the finished product. I think that would have been fun. But
they were keeping "Wouldn't It Be Nice" until the very credits. Like they kept that.
Right.
They kept that at bay. I was like, why are we playing? Why are we doing that one yet? And they keep it to the end. But
I did watch all the closing credits because I think that that was part of the movie. I mean, you had to see all of it.
Yes.
So yes,
the music in general, how they mixed it all. Like I think like the opening credits of the movie is incredible. It sort of gets you like, it's not like we don't really. Like that's what a lot of people look at when they think of the Beach Boys. They think of that era, and we don't even talk about that era. It's just the pretense of it. And so that was an interesting choice. And it's just told in the credits of like here's all your 60s surf songs and everything, and clips of like really good recreation of that. With I mean like that was really well done. All of these like 60s film like that comes in at various points, and they do a really good job with that too. I like the film.
And can I just, and one more scene. I just want to mention the hamburger scene. I just thought was very well done. Again, the villain of the piece.
Yes,
it's very effective.
Yeah, that was, and they talk about like she played up the uncomfortableness of that. Really, she's like he's saying he's hungry, trying to give him the hamburger, and then I mean that. Yeah, I thought
how uncomfortable too. That all was,
and that they're all there. Like he's the reason that they're all there. Like he's paying the salary of all these people. There's like 10 people around that whole area, and then they're just allowing this guy to just.
Well, and that's why it makes an effective story too as a biopic, because there were a lot of people around who witnessed it, who can speak to what happened and the emotions. Where harking back to first man, you don't know what was going on in his head. He didn't talk about it. You just don't know, and don't impose it on him. Whereas Brian Wilson, I think, has talked a lot about his experience. And again, you have the housekeeper and the girlfriend and whoever the other guy was he a bodyguard, or I don't know, he's kind of the therapist henchman or something. I don't know what he was, but there's a lot of people there who could speak to what happened and what it was like.
Yeah, and there's various points again with First Man. I think it probably was the first, what we watched first. But I remember them like walking through their neighborhood or what, like whenever in First Man where Ryan Gosling and Jason Clarke are walking through that at night, and they're just like talking about, oh, you could talk about your daughter, and they're just like walking around. I'm like, oh my God. At this exact same time, you have Paul Dano in a studio, Brian Wilson in a studio making this really interesting Pet Sounds album. Let me just cut back to that, because that was so energetic and so fun and so interesting. And I have to watch these people just like, I don't know, mope about being astronauts. No, I like this movie a lot. I thought it was I think it's one of the better ones that we've even watched this season. I really, really liked it. And I like an artist working at the top of their game like that. I thought that was really fun. And then to sort of see the sort of dark side of fame, I thought showing sort of both sides of that was very interesting.
And the joy, they made it very obvious, and maybe it's the director made it very obvious that he was happiest when he was singing with his brothers, and just pure joy of it. And, then balanced out by the turmoil when he's not singing, and, etc.
Yeah, I had another scene I was trying to think of, but yeah, what I liked, there were like just several different moments in it, and like that you didn't lose track of these different, like I love a movie that has several things that's like, oh, that was really good, that's really, like these pieces of time that you think about it, and you think about all these different separate pieces, and they were all really good, and they were all tied together interestingly and all that. So, okay. Ava, would you recommend this movie, and what would you rate it?
Highly. I would give it 4 hamburgers.
Hamburgers, that's a good one.
I was going to say Cadillacs, but I don't know that you can find Cadillacs.
Yeah. I don't think there are any Cadillacs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was... I was thinking they were sitting there leaning on that car, or in that Corvette outside of the studio, and I'm like, I came to a realization you can't even just like lean on a car anymore without an alarm or denting it or whatever you're gonna do. Like, that's sad thing. Anyways, Diane, what would you recommend this movie, and what would you rate it?
I would recommend this movie. I think, especially for Beach Boy fans, and if you really wanted to know what happened to Brian Wilson without having to read a book, this would be a good movie to watch. I think I'm going to rate this one a surfboard.
Surfboard.
Because they never surfed.
Yeah, they never surfed. Oh, it's only one of them was a surfer.
Yeah.
Yeah. The how about a person on a surfboard? Is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't care.
There you go.
It's just, when you think of the Beach Boys, we think of a surfer.
It looks like martial arts person on it. A ninja surfer.
He's got his wetsuit. That's a serious surfer right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked this movie a lot. I thought it was filled with so many great performances, and the way that they told the story was really great. I think more movies should sort of take this approach where you have like an actor playing a younger version and older person. I thought that was an excellent way of telling this. And I think that might have been an interesting Neil Armstrong thing if you wanted to do one that was old and one. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting.
Made it a little more exciting.
Yeah. It reminds me.
It was only 6 years. I don't think he aged that much.
No, I mean like show him older when he's not interested in. I don't know.
You should expand it. Yeah.
Something.
Everybody wants to know what happened to
and the time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, it might remind me like Steve Jobs is now it's told in like 3 acts where it jumps forward in different points in time. One of my favorite biopics ever.
I never saw
Steve
that.
Jobs. It's such a good movie. Such a good movie.
Okay.
Which version? Tell me who starred in it.
Michael Fassbender. It's the Sorkin one. Sorkin made that and wrote and directed it. Oh no, sorry. It was directed by Danny Boyle, but it was written by Aaron Sorkin. Which made it really. Danny Boyle's very frenetic, and then of course so is Sorkin with his writing. So it's a lot of moving parts, and it's really good. But it's not. It doesn't switch back and forth. It's just makes these huge time jumps. But this one was interesting. Which may have an interesting structure because essentially it's not a traditional act structure. You do have things revealed to you that colors the film, like the father reveal, like different things that comes along. But essentially, you're having 2 films playing alongside each other, and they're switching back and forth, which is interesting. I found it to be very interesting. I gave this movie musical notes. That's what I'm doing.
Yay!
It's really good. I liked it, and I like the use of music in it. And sound editing and all that was very powerful. It starts like on that black screen. Where and you're just hearing like different pops of Beach Boys songs. Like, I mean, there was just a lot of strong choices from a musical perspective, which makes sense for the subject matter to have something that's so interestingly done like that. Well, great. We will now head into preview time, where we will preview next week's coming attractions on our final episode of this season. Here we go.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
So let's take a look at what's coming your way. Well, next week on Double Feature Movie Club, like we said before, it is our final episode of this season. It's going to be sad but fun. You know, we decided to pick a really interesting final. What's it called? Final
finale.
Theme.
Theme. Yes.
Theme around
vampires.
We're doing vampires next week here on Double Feature Movie Club.
We've never done vampires before.
No, I guess not even at all. Not even like a one-off. So yeah, it's vampires. So first off, we are watching Jim Jarmusch's 2013 fantasy horrors, as it's called. It's a Only Lovers Left Alive. It stars Tilda Swinton and Tom Hiddleston, and it should be interesting. I've heard people really like that movie. Jim Jarmusch is an interesting director. He takes bold swings, and I oftentimes land on liking them. So it's but they are very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. Where can people watch that, Diane?
You got to rent it, bud.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. It's Amazon rental, Redbox, wherever you get your rentals. Okie
dokie. So that's Only Lovers Left Alive. That's our first one. And then our second one, as Diane said before, is the one that I have been forced to put on here. It's 2012's Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Is it Hunter? Is it Slayer? What is it?
Vampire Slayer.
Vampire Slayer. See how much I know
about. I think it's Slayer. Now I said that, I'm like, well, maybe it's not. Yeah, and I did just look it up too. What's so sad? It's also a riddle.
Mm-hmm. You know. Oh, okay. Hunter. It
is. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which is, for those people who are listening, this is based on a book. And this guy who wrote the book, he tells about how he's in the bookstore with his wife, and he's going down the aisle. And you know, they're end caps in bookstores. You know, if you go in the bookstore, they have end caps of books. And he's standing there in the aisle, and on one side is Bill O'Reilly's Abraham Lincoln biography. Uh-huh. On the other side is the Twilight series. And he said, "Oh my God, I have a great idea for a book." And it is the best. I'm telling you, everyone I've recommended it to that has read it has loved this book. The premise, they just have loved this book. Just because who would have ever put those two things together? He's very, very creative in how he did it too. The movie doesn't follow the book exactly, you know, but it gets the premise across. And, I'm kind of sad that it hasn't turned into a, you know, like this a cult hit.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. Diane's been trying to get me to watch this for some time, so it's just,
and it's got a 33 on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes.
What we'll do is we'll switch it.
But I'll do 73% of people who have watched it liked it. So
okay.
So you know. Yeah.
We'll switch it where I'll do the Only Lovers Left Alive. And you'll do the okay. We could have talked about that off air, but we'll put that here.
Yeah. Well, so we'll just do it now.
Yeah. Well, great. Yeah, that'll just be Diane and I next week. This will be our first Diane and I solo for this full season, which is interesting.
It is.
That's
we're going to be talking about bloodsuckers.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure.
Yeah. The other one's like a kind of a romance thing, isn't it? Only Lovers Left. I think it's like a talk. That's just the premise that they're vampires. I think is so it's not even like, I don't think it's, I mean, a horror or some, I don't know. We'll see. We'll learn. Yeah, I'm excited. And Ava, thank you for joining us. I mean, you've been on here, I think, was it 3 times this season? I want to say you were
twice,
here.
I think, but whatever. However many, it was wonderful.
Yes.
It's always the best movies that we watch are when Ava's here.
Just because they're not horror movies.
Yeah.
So you did the Jason Reitman movies, Young Adult Frontrunner, and you did
that's a 3.
And Robert Redford movies.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
They were spaced out wonderfully.
Yeah.
So it was 3.
Yeah.
No, it was. I had a tremendous time. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll have to have you in the chat next week. We'll put your top and bottom ones if you wouldn't mind.
Of the ones I watched,
Yes.
it has to be a disclaimer.
Yes, the ones you watched.
Of the ones you watched.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yes.
so grateful that you have no idea how grateful I am that I missed the last couple of weeks. I am so grateful.
I think Ava missed the last couple of weeks too, since you weren't there and they weren't.
I told you I would come when Diane's not there, but not if they're horror movies. I just don't watch them, so
you know. One of those movies I did.
Not there, and you're not watching horror movies. I'll watch them and be there.
Okay. Yeah.
Sweetie.
So it really isn't a Diane thing. It's the movie thing.
It's a Cade thing. It's a Cade thing.
No, yeah, we had a lot of. I mean, we'll be reminiscing next week, so we won't do too much now. But we had some really good episodes and good movies this season. So it's I think we had a really good season here. So
I think we did too.
Yeah. So, we'll look forward to next week where we talk about vampires, and then we'll also a little sneak peek. If you want to do be part of the live stream where we do our rankings, we will do that at the end of the live stream, but it won't be released till later. So, if you want to be part of the cool crowd, we'd recommend joining that. It's going to be a longer episode next week, so just so you, but yeah, because we have to do both. But you can join us live. Where on youtube.com/Cade Thomas. And like always, we're here live, I guess just next week only, but when we are here live,
one more time.
At 6 p.m. Central on Sundays, and then it's available next day as a podcast. So wherever you're listening to this, watching us, thumbs us up, subscribe, rate us 5 stars,
all the buttons.
Click all the buttons, write a review.
Click all the buttons. Please do. Write a review. Follow us, even if it's for a little while.
Hearts.
Yes, hearts, whatever.
Lots of hearts.
Click it all. Yes, and follow us. We have Double Feature Movie Club is on Twitter and Instagram at Double Feature MC. We post some original content there. We do the 60-second reviews of each of these films, and they're fun. We have a fun time with those. So check those out. They're on our Instagram, and they're also on my TikTok at the K Thomas. So, Ava, thank you for joining us, and
thank you, Ava.
Thank you.
And happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And Diane, it's great to have you back. It's always great to have you back.
It's great to be back, Cade. I missed you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I missed you. You. Well, great. We'll see everyone here next week for Only Lovers Left Alive and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Okay. Bye.
Bye.